This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
We want families to come here and gain insightful strategies that empower them to successfully teach diverse learners at home.
Hosted by founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool, Peggy Ployer.
Our goal is that these powerful weekly conversations will boost your confidence to cultivate the best at-home learning environment for your student.
For more homeschool resources, go to spedhomeschool.com. You're listening to Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Peggy Ployer.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Today, we are going to talk about the intimate connection between mental health and learning disabilities. And my guest today is Shelley Woon. Shelley is a passionate educator who brings a solution-focused and collaborative perspective to each situation, which is informed by her 30-plus years of engaging with students, families, and community partners. She values the brain-learning connection and is eager to assist others in developing an understanding of a neuroplastic approach to unlocking potentially for those struggling with learning difficulties, or particularly. She is thrilled to be an integral part of the dynamic and innovative Aerosmith community. In the key role of head of school, she holds a master's in education and leadership and a supervisory officer and principal qualifications, along with specialists in special education and reading. Welcome to the show, Shelley. I am so excited to have you here today and to talk about this really important subject.
Thanks, Peggy. It's great to be here. That it is definitely a subject that's passionate to me.
Yeah. Usually I have my guests start out talking about that. Why it's so important, especially from their perspective, and just a little bit more background about you. And with that much education experience, I'm assuming you've seen a lot, and you've heard a lot from families, and so you have all this experience you're bringing into this conversation. And I would just love for our audience to get to know you a little bit better and some of that background.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Peggy. I
Mm-hmm.
think that some of my experience specific to learning disabilities and mental health actually began in my own home. That my
Mm,
brother, who is 2 years older than me, really struggled to learn, and by the time we were in grade 6, we were actually in the same grade together. People
oh,
thought we were
wow.
twins going forward from then. And just
Mm,
watching, how talented and creative he was in so many ways, but his difficulty with
right.
learning and how that unfolded in
Mm,
our home, and the dreaded report card days,
yeah.
and the toll all of that took on his self-esteem over
Mm,
time. And so I think that's where really my interest in special
mm,
education began.
yeah.
And yeah, and then just in my various roles throughout my career, within my own classroom initially, and then as a district principal, and then as a superintendent of special education and a couple of different boards,
Mm,
just looking at the challenges and the number of children who weren't able to come to school because their mental health was really getting
yeah.
in the way of that. It started off, they all arrived at school wanting to do the best they could, and
Mhm.
some of the hurdles that they met along the way really got in the way of them feeling good about themselves, and it
Right.
led to compromised well-being. So just working with
Mm,
families, and in the last number of years in my career, there was a lot of emphasis on mental health and partnerships between school boards and community partners. And so that also opened up a lot of opportunity for learning and thinking about these topics in different ways. And then certainly when I
yeah.
became familiar with Barbara's work, and then now working for her, just seeing some of our families where the children are coming to us from, and what's happening for them as a family, a lot of insights, and then opportunity to make a difference across all those various years and situations. So
Yeah.
that's my background. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about Barbara's work? Because maybe a lot of people aren't familiar with that, and how that's connected with the school that you are head of.
Sure. So Barbara's work really began with her own life story and challenges. And she was an individual who struggled to learn. And, in grade one, her classroom teacher shared that she might not really amount to much in life because of
Mm,
her struggles, and that she really had a block toward learning. And Barbara, as a young child, pictured that she actually had a block in her head.
oh,
But um but some of Barbara's strengths really allowed her to push through. And while doing her own education in psychology and the post-secondary system, um, that she became aware of situations where the brain showed potential for change, whether it was
mm,
with rats or whether it was with individuals who had had traumatic brain injuries. And so she
yeah.
explored this type of work, and then started to think about what she could do to address the types of needs she was presenting with. And so she developed one of her exercises called symbol relations. We also refer
Mm,
to it as um, clocks within our school, but this really started unpacking and addressing some of Barbara's own needs. And it's
mm,
all really rooted in the neuroplasticity of the brain. And so targeting specific cognitive functions. And
ah,
after helping herself, she began to try to understand other people's learning difficulties and addressed um, others' needs through creating some exercises that targeted different cognitive functions than maybe where her own learning challenges had existed. And
mm,
so gradually, like, our school's been going for over 40 years, and so Barbara was a real pioneer in
mm,
neuroplasticity of the brain,
yeah. Yeah.
that way ahead of her time.
Definitely. So
Yeah.
that gives parents a lot of hope. They're listening and they have a child who's struggling. Just that the brain isn't stuck where it is right now. It can change, and I know that a lot of times we feel like this is what we're stuck with. Our child can't move past this. That it's just too hard. That they have their label and that's what they're stuck with. Now we've got to try to figure out how to work around it. But the potential of change in the brain and the change in wiring is like you said, it started. I mean, people started talking about it because long ago they said, well, this is your track now.
Yep.
And but that's no longer the case, that or the viewpoint that majority of people that really work in this field understand now.
Yeah. Yeah, we went through, even throughout my educational career, there was a time where, yes, this is what you have, um, this is what you're going to be able to do, and these are your limitations. And then
Mhm.
there was, a lot of shift toward understanding the learner through different strengths, and then making sure that your full approach was addressing area addressing learning through whatever style of learner they happen to
Mm,
be. And then I think in the last number of years of my educational career, a lot of it was around accommodations and modifications. So lowering expectations,
mhm.
which then led to huge gaps, and
Right.
those
Yeah.
individuals then being limited to in their post-secondary opportunities and
Mhm.
workplace opportunities. And so, but with Barbara's work, it is about literally addressing the concern head on, right in the brain.
I
So
love it.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So when you were talking a while ago, you talked about, um, the fact that mental health issues keep a lot of kids at home.
Hmm.
And I think that is one of the things that we've seen growing in the homeschool community too, is that because kids have such a difficulty in getting to school, that parents are choosing homeschooling, but then they have this child that is dealing with so many mental health issues, they don't know how to approach the school. And so I know that there's a very large audience out there, parents who kind of feel stuck. And so if you're feeling that way, I want you to hold on for this conversation because Shelley is going to talk a lot um, about that intimate connection about with that learning disability. Because I think, um, and have you seen that? Which comes first? I know. As I was thinking about this interview, I'm like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? The learning disability or the mental health? Which comes up first, or is it kind of in combination?
Yeah, that's I think it is a tough question to answer. What I'm mainly going to be focusing on is where a learning disability exists, and then from
Mm,
that we end up seeing compromised mental health. And one of the
right.
things I like to think about is, and in helping people understand, is try to picture an adult that you've known who's been doing really well, and they seem to be on a trajectory um, where there isn't anything that they can't do.
Mm,
And then suddenly they start to present with some mental health difficulties, maybe right to the point where they're off work on
mm,
a mental health leave.
right.
And I believe that all of us are positioned to be faced with the challenges of compromised mental health
Yeah.
when the situational demands in front of us exceed our capacity. And
Hmm.
so as adults, we might be faced with, a workplace possibly where it's a toxic work environment, or the person
Mm,
who's leading us isn't leading us in a healthy way, or there's
right.
relationship challenges, or we have family members who have serious health conditions. And so
Mm,
all of that, here we were doing quite well. All of those demands
right.
compromises our well-being, and suddenly
Mm,
might be diagnosed, with anxiety or depression, or, some other
right.
type of mental health need. So then if we
Mhm.
think about our little learners,
Mm,
in many cases, whether it's, sending them off to school, or they're coming around our kitchen table to learn,
yeah.
and they've been superstars up till that point that we see
Mm,
them, they learn to walk, they learn to talk, and now we've got letters and numbers in front of them, and suddenly the demands that are in front of them are exceeding their
yes. Yeah.
capacity,
Mm,
and what that the toll that that takes over time. So
right.
something that's going on with them, and within Aerosmith, because we're really looking at the brain, that we would look at some one of the areas of cognitive functions needs strengthening, that it's
Mm,
weak, and we need to build the cognitive function that's related to whatever it is that's getting in the way of the child succeeding
mm,
in, the traditional school system. We look at the surface, and we see that they, are
right.
struggling to read.
Mm,
And
mhm.
but when we think about all the demands that are required when someone is learning to read, that it traces back to different parts of the brain. And so we try to tease
Right.
out which function is required for this task, and um, and if they're struggling, if this function requires further development, um, then it might show in a way where they're struggling to add, they're struggling to remember their letters, they're struggling to form
Mhm.
sentences in a proper way. And all of that takes a toll when you just feel like it's kind of,
Right. You just can't get over the hurdles.
yeah,
They
no, you
just keep
cannot.
knocking down, and you're
Yeah.
doing everything you can and everything you got in you.
Yeah, and then
But
you're
you're still
surrounded by people who maybe are doing well, and it looks easy, and
right.
so that
Yes.
chips
Mhm.
away even more, and then what you're seeing other people do is far greater than what you're doing, and so that, it just takes a
Yeah.
toll,
Mm,
and it
mhm.
erodes at a child's self-esteem and their sense of well-being,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. So,
yeah.
in general, what? as far as we're looking at the bigger mental health picture, is this a growing, I mean, it seems like it's a growing pandemic almost. That I've been speaking on depression for years, and it just seems like every time I look up the new statistics, they're up again. And it's
Mhm.
like, oh, I couldn't believe that, and especially the kids are getting younger.
Yeah.
Is that just a continuing growth?
Yeah, that, it's it's when you think about all the things that we're faced with in our lives and how much more complex our
Yeah.
lives are, and the
Mm,
demands on everyone in our family, and everything that people are juggling,
yeah.
and our children are
Mm,
living that, and many of our adults are living that, and so kids are experiencing that and feeling stress within their home. And when
mm.
we unpack some of these situations, it's logical, like, to think that you wouldn't feel a bit of anxiety
Right.
might seem unusual
Mm,
um than that you do. And so like, I do believe that there's lots of factors, and the area where we really try to focus on is around um, learning disabilities. Now, we do have
mm,
individuals who are struggling with um, with some mental health needs, and they if they aren't attending our program full time and they aren't doing a Aerosmith cognitive assessment, we typically would encourage them to do our symbol relations cognitive exercise,
mm.
because it's one of the most powerful exercises, and it's the one that I was referencing earlier about Barbara developing to address some of her own needs. And it
Mhm.
helps you process information, it helps you
Hmm,
comprehend information, it helps you make connections across um, different situations, and learn from prior situations,
okay.
that it's a fast-paced world that we're living in. And
Yes.
when we think about
Mhm,
the volume of work that's in front of us, whether we're a student
mhm.
or an adult working, or just someone trying to stay on top of our social media and emails, it's a lot that we're trying to take in. If we're
Right.
struggling to do that
Yes.
in any way, or struggling to process what we're reading, or we're struggling to decode the text, that
Hmm,
um, that all of that can take a toll. And many adults are living with those difficulties. They've just gone through a school system where they were
mm,
accommodated and things were modified, not that their learning needs were really
mm.
fully addressed and met.
Exactly.
And they're
Yeah.
carrying those challenges
Hmm.
forward.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you listed off a few things. What are the big ones that, because I know we think of more diagnoses than think
Mm.
of like these different things that are kind of like the underlying factors that you kind of alluded to earlier, and these, I guess, difficulties
Yeah.
that so what are they, and how do we look at this differently? I mean, that's I think probably the most important thing is we do need to change our mindset. Is that correct? On how we look at when a child struggles.
Yeah, no, we absolutely do need to look at it differently, because if we're looking at it at the surface and understanding
Mm,
it from the surface, the problem can look the same, whether it's someone's
mm,
struggling to read, or they're struggling in math, or they seem to have memory difficulties, or they have anxiety. When we
mm,
uncover it all, that the root is where we need to really
mm,
find out what's at the root, and because that's really going to inform how we're going to address the concern. And
right.
so yeah, that some of the big even when a child is assessed, has a psychoeducational assessment, that we
Mhm.
always hear,
Right. Yeah.
difficulties like nonverbal learning difficulty, or they have
Mm.
a memory difficulty, or processing speed, or phonological awareness, or maybe they're even diagnosed with dyslexia, or dyscalculia, or
Mhm.
dysgraphia, that they might, but all those words aren't about solutions, that they
Right.
give us a
Exactly.
sense.
So true.
Yep,
Mhm.
even memory, memory is complex, and depending on what
Mm.
it is that you're trying to recall, it may be a different cognitive function that
Hmm.
is being drawn upon. And so with our the assessment that many of our students do, um, allows us to be more specific about which exercise they're going to engage in,
Mm.
so that we can address their specific area of need, because that's the cognitive function that's getting in the way of them,
Mm.
remembering the list of items that someone asked them to gather, or said, do this,
Right.
this, and this, and then meet me at the front door, um, or, struggles to remember basic information, or it, it's all of those things draw upon a different cognitive function. So
Okay.
we want to discover which function is getting in the way of an individual um, achieving and meeting their potential. And so by addressing that cognitive function and programming specifically to it,
Hmm.
then we are rewiring the brain and strengthening
Right.
that
Yeah.
function.
Yeah. What kind of time frame do you see that a student when you finally get to the point of, oh, this is the struggle.
Yeah.
um, and now we've got to start, thinking about this differently and approaching it differently. What kind of time frame does it take to, and what does it affect too? Does it affect just first of all just the processing ability or the ability to do something, and then the mental health follows, or do you see kind of a progression in all areas just because achievement is being seen?
So um depending on the need, and everyone would have their own unique cognitive profile
Mhm.
when like if an individual does an assessment. So we assess around 19 different cognitive functions, and some of the functions will see more, like the symbol relations cognitive function. Quite often someone who's experiencing a difficulty, we will see that come up as an area that needs some sort of um, support to address or strengthening.
Hmm.
And when we are assessing the function, we're assessing them on a full continuum, where someone might be average, or someone might be severe or moderately severe, or a mild moderate profile. And so,
Hmm.
depending on when we do the full assessment and we see your overall cognitive profile, that will inform how long we would predict that
Hmm.
the individual may need to engage in the program. And that is one of the key things. They need to be engaging in the program.
Yes,
None of it
yes.
happens through osmosis, that
Right.
you need to engage in order to address and have neuroplastic change occur. So
Mhm.
we may see a student who we'll say, um, your program, if you're engaging in it in fully, would be a
Mhm.
year, where we'll see some individuals where we'll say, based on your results, it might be 3 to 5 years, and that
Mm.
is with that full engagement. Now, certainly, um, your well-being and your overall mental health can change the rate of that as well, because
Yes.
fully are you able to fully engage? We do have,
Mm.
um, we will see families come forward where they do actually need to have some um, mental health treatment happening before
Mm.
we would recommend that they're engaging with us. And then we also have families where their child engages in our program, and they actually do better in
Mm.
their treatment, because they're able to um, engage in treatment at a deeper level. They are able to think
Oh,
more deeply.
yes.
They're able to process
Mhm.
themselves and the questions that are being asked of them. So it really do, does range. And how we
Hmm.
are different than a lot of programs is that we aren't looking to have someone come to us at the age of 6 and stay with us until, you know,
Hmm.
grade 12 or whatever.
Right.
That we want to ideally get in there while a child's young, when the need is first being recognized before their
Right.
mental health is severely
Mm, mhm.
compromised. And because the other thing where I was saying about, them becoming aware of how their different peers become
Right.
aware of how a child is different, or other family members might
Mm,
become aware, and siblings that hopefully they're offering a loving home environment to their sibling, but they're not
right.
always the
Mhm.
kindest or friendliest. Or lots of times individuals with a learning disability struggle
Mm,
to understand jokes
right.
properly, so
Mhm.
they can become the subject of a joke rather than
Mm,
really being there to appreciate a joke. All of these things take a toll on an individual's well-being. So we do want to
yeah.
capture them when they're young, but at the same time, like in our summer program, not this past summer, the one before, we had a
Mm.
65-year-old woman attending our summer
Ah,
program, because our
uh-huh.
program is for um, children, youth, young adults and
Mm,
seniors. And so, um, if a senior is feeling like they want to be working on their memory, then um,
mhm.
they're best to do an assessment so we can target which cognitive exercises. Or our symbol relations cognitive exercise doesn't require an assessment, and so many adults want to improve their processing speed, their ability to comprehend and make connections.
Mm,
And so they will do that
yeah.
exercise. Yeah.
Well, that's neat. Yes. There's so much involved in that. Um, but but yeah, for each person, it's an individual.
Yep, absolutely.
It's an individual journey.
Yep.
But yet, the brain has plasticity and it can
Yep.
change, and that's the common denominator between all of
Yes.
it. Um, and so yes, so there is hope. I think we get stuck in the mental health rabbit hole of and then we feel like we've just added another thing onto a learning disability, where really, if we can, I mean, what you're talking about is that there's a solution to both and they actually are interconnected.
Right.
And so once you start dealing with one, then the other is going to follow suit. Not completely, I mean, like you were talking about, mental health comes with a whole bag of things.
Yep. Yep. And even like with the symbol relations cognitive exercise, that because it strengthens your ability to comprehend and process and make connections, that some of some individuals, when they're engaging in that, it can um help them unpack or understand past trauma, which in
Oh,
itself
uh-huh.
can create some feeling of unwellness, that they're suddenly
Hmm.
processing that, hey, when this was happening to me,
Mhm.
this is why it was happening. And I might not have experienced it in I might experience it more deeply now that I can
Ah.
process it more. And so
Mhm.
we do recommend, if there's if there is compromised mental well-being or past trauma, that we do encourage families to also be accessing mental health supports, and
Mhm.
whether going to therapy or different types of groups that might support. Or and even within our own school, we use and encourage mindfulness a lot around just regulating and controlling your emotions,
Mm,
your
mhm.
um, you know breathing slowly,
Right.
pausing,
Yes.
because with some of our kids, like self-regulation is quite an issue by the time that they uh, come to us, that they, can struggle to
Right.
manage their emotions and don't have the tools that they might require.
Right, a lot of it is just they go into safety mode,
Mm,
and those become habits that are just a way of life over
yeah,
time, and they do take time to change,
yeah, absolutely.
and so, yes, I'm glad you brought that up because they do go hand in hand so much. We had a question, from a viewer that was kind of related to that, and I'd love to bring it up. Um, Angela had asked, "Can you talk about autism anxiety connection and tools you'd like to use to build emotional awareness?"
Yeah, so again, this is where we would really look at it from its anxiety that we name at the surface, and whether an
Mm,
individual is an individual with autism, or an individual with another type of learning need or mental health
mhm,
need, that we really want to determine which cognitive function might be at play here and getting
mm,
in the way here. And so, like, we know that individuals on the spectrum can often be very detailed focused, and so they might
mhm,
be sensitive to changes in their routine, or some of the their sensory needs, and
right,
what what's happening for them there, whether it's in their home setting or outside their home,
mm,
the social uh, situations, and understanding social rules and social norms, and the
mm,
black and white thinking, and where do we see gray. So we really
yeah,
want to look at where the origins are of
mm,
the problem, that like, when again, around the symbol relations, like making connections between situations. So rather than feeling that something is unpredictable, bringing the
mm,
predictability to it, making the connection between something that's happened before and the likelihood that this is going to happen now. And so by engaging
right,
in that program, ideally, or exercise, ideally, you your anxiety can be released, because
mm,
reduced, because you can recognize the connection between what I'm about to do and what
mm,
I'm worried about, and what has happened in past events, and how ideally they unfolded in a positive way for me. Or for the social part, if someone has difficulty with like
mm,
a nonverbal learning difficulty, we do have an exercise that really focuses on interpreting situations, really trying to figure out what's happening in the situation, the emotion of the people within the situation, what
mm,
might have happened just before that, what might happen just after that, and really try to develop some of those nonverbal type of thinking skills and empathy. And
right,
then the symbolic thinking cognitive function, just that ability to focus, and attending to a task and persevering through it, and being able
mm,
to self direct. So the anxiety on the surface looks this way, but
right,
which of those, or is it all of those that are getting in the way? And that's the other thing too,
exactly,
with individuals on the spectrum, that we really but there are a lot of best practices that are known to support
mm,
individuals with autism, and so we would encourage that you continue to use those
mm,
strategies while you're working through the exercises. And what we also know is, an individual with autism, it by doing these exercises, it doesn't mean you're not going to have autism. What we might be able to do is strengthen some of the functions that are getting um, in the way, creating the anxiety,
mhm,
and hopefully reduce some of that. We have had
mm,
many individuals with autism come through our school, or our doing schooling,
mhm,
and they're doing some of our exercises during part of their their day,
Yeah.
and I've seen positive results.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yes, I love how you broke that down because we can look at the anxiety and we can say, okay, so here's what you can do about it, but really it's getting to that root and learning just that association. It's learning, the what was going on before, what was going after. I mean, those things tend to be blocked out for students who are very, focused in the moment, and like you said, have all of those different sensory needs, everything with the nervous system,
Mhm. Yeah.
is out of whack too. There's just so many things that we forget are going on,
Yeah.
even as on the parent side, and of course the student side, they just know it's a mess.
Yeah. Yeah.
and they can't move beyond it, and so they shut down.
Yeah.
And so being the one who's trying to help them, um and I hope parents are hearing this, that there's more involved than just a quick tool or trick to put in place.
Mm.
It's going to take some work, but the work is well worth it, because you're coming from the bottom and you're working up, and you're going to see change. I know I've seen it in my own life. When my son was diagnosed, my mom looks at me and like, "That's you," and worked through a lot of things, and a lot of things I learned on this show that I've just myself helps improve, but over time, those things, and helping my kids with that, it's been amazing, to see that change, and that change is possible. Like you said, the
Yeah.
diagnosis doesn't go away, but you learn to have to understand it better and then to work within it. So yeah, that's so much hope there.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And that is what we really want families to be realizing, is that there are answers and there are things that you can do, and it won't
Mhm.
be like our program is not a magic wand, right? It's that we
Right.
really do need the individual to engage, that they need to be able to engage in the exercise for a sustained um, period of time. They need to be able to move
Mhm.
through um, challenge, the work becomes more challenging, but it's not too challenging. It's just what it's reachable, and then let's reach it,
Yes.
grab it,
Mhm.
celebrate it, and then let's introduce the next challenge. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think you hit something on the head, and we a lot of times parents will come to us and say, my child is not motivated. Um, how do you approach something like this when you know that something change has to happen,
Yeah.
but to move the child in the same direction that you know they need to go in order for that motivation to actually increase?
Yeah. Yeah, so with motivation, again, it's similar to what I would look at as it's motivation on the surface, just as anxiety on the
Right.
surface. So
Mhm.
so my first question would be is, when are they motivated, and where do
Ah.
we see them motivated, and then see if
Mhm.
we can find any commonalities about, around those activities, and then try
Mhm.
to um, unpack where it does feel difficult and what is it about those difficulties. And of course, with our Aerosmith work, that we would want to look at the cognitive profile, complete it,
Mm.
do an assessment to see where some of those difficulties are. On our website, we actually have
Mhm.
something called a cognitive questionnaire that can give some insights into um, the a cognitive profile, where our
Okay.
assessment will go even deeper into that, but it would just
Mm.
start to give, if people answer all the questions, either about themselves, because we do
Mhm.
support adults as well, or about their children, that it'll help give some sense of, oh, maybe it's this type of cognitive function, and we have lots of
Mm.
information about each function on the site where people will see, oh yes, that's me, or yes,
Ah.
that's them. And it
Mhm.
clearly shows what some of the difficulties might be, and what you would see if they're, that function was targeted through some some of the cognitive exercises. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep,
But
so that
yeah,
yeah.
with them, I don't know if I answered your motivation question well enough. It's the same as where we used to hear lazy, right? That so and so's lazy.
Right.
Well, let's
Mhm.
understand what's getting in the way. What's I also really believe in Dr.
Exactly.
Ross Green's work. I don't know if people are
Hmm.
familiar with that, his collaborative and proactive solutions, where it's about
Hmm.
understanding the perspective of the problem, and understanding what's getting in the way, and believing that everyone, we all would do well if we could. And so if someone
Right.
isn't, what's getting in the way? And we
Mhm.
as adults apply our own theory about what's getting in the way, but if we hear it from the
Right.
perspective of the child, we might
Uh-huh.
find it something very different. So it's
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think, both his work and our work go um go hand in hand. And our students are here doing the work, but we're also working with them while they
Mhm.
are managing a lot of lagging skills. And so how do we
Yes.
support them through the
Mhm.
work, and with those challenges? So I encourage his work as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have to
Yeah.
look that up. Dr.
Yeah.
Ross Green, you
Yep.
said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, his website's called Lives in the Balance.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll, yeah, have to reference that as well. And uh, Shelley's website is aerosmith.ca. I had it up on the screen, but if you're listening to the podcast, and we'll talk a little bit more of the school in just a minute here. But we did have one parent ask about motivation too, and how to figure out what kids are interested in when they're lacking motivation. So I think that the first thing is what Shelley just said: is you've got to figure out what's blocking the motivation, and then also find areas where they are already motivated. And then sometimes it's trial and error. I know for my kids, it's been a lot of that. Try something out. Are they motivated? Or are they not? And don't get too tightly wound around anything
Yeah.
until you see that motivation pick up. And don't invest a lot of money in it either.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So, so yeah, we're also wired differently, and those things that spark the brain to want to learn, to want to work, are just very, very different.
Yeah.
And when you find those things, it's wonderful.
And I think that, like, with our kids who are struggling to learn, right? They've just
Mhm.
they hit so many what's, felt like roadblocks, barriers, lack
Right.
of success. And so that can
Hmm.
really interfere with the motivation. I think that's partly, why with our program, why we start out with a lot of success, and then it
Mm,
gradually um, builds. And it's related to as well, building the brain, rewiring, um, and but also just that sense of, okay, here's a task I can engage,
right.
I can do it, I can master it. And yeah, so looking for ways to create some success, right? That's what
Right.
we are
Yes.
motivated by: success, not
Hmm.
all the challenges all the time, especially if
Yeah.
if our self-esteem's been worn away. It's hard
Mm,
to
right.
feel like you're going to face the next failure. So
Right.
what can we find that's going to promote some success?
Yes,
Mm,
absolutely. That's good. It's a good perspective to take on it, and because we as adults are not going to keep doing things we fail at.
right.
We have an out, but our kids, when they're going to school, they don't have an out, and we have to help them to find that success, to get to that place. And so taking it from that perspective, it really makes a lot of sense. So can you talk a little bit about the Aerosmith School? So it's Aerosmith .ca, and you talked about some of the resources you have. Also, in the show notes, Shelley has an entire handout with a whole bunch more resources. And I'm going to give you a link to that handout so you can download it right off of Google Docs. And you won't have to search for the link. It'll just be in the show notes. But yeah, what else? They can find that quick questionnaire and lots of information on the website. And so, yeah, just share with us what's on the website, but also services and things that your school offers.
Yeah, so if you go to aerosmith.ca, that where when you land in that spot, it'll really bring you to a part of the website that really speaks about Aerosmith and the Aerosmith program. And there are organizations all around the world that are utilizing Barbara's program. It's still all housed out of here, but different organizations offering it. So it will explain all about neuroplasticity. There'll be lots of research for people to check out if that's what they're interested in.
Right.
It'll outline all of the cognitive functions, and I find them really fascinating to read about, and I love that they are presented in a really simple way on the website. You can see the function, you can click on it, it'll tell you about what that function is related to, how it might present if there's difficulties, and what it might offer if it's enhanced. So you can really see
Wow.
yourself whether whether that might be the area where you have a need. We still would do the assessment to figure out for sure what's going on. And then a part of it, you'll see a section where you can link to our school that really gives you a sense of what our overall school community is like. And so we offer programs or classes throughout the full day, right from 7:45 in the morning till 9 p.m. at night Eastern time. And this is so that individuals can join us, whether they're joining us for one period a day online or even coming in person. Our in-person is from 8:40 in the morning till 3:30, with a after school program that goes till 5:30. So people are joining us for either one period or two periods, or
Wow.
all the way up to 8 periods. And so it really goes in nicely with whatever other, whether you're attending a public school or whether you're doing a homeschooling program. Many of our families are doing their own homeschooling program and supplementing their program with our work. And some of them have in the end decided they're going to do us Aerosmith more intensively for a while to address some of those special education needs, and then work more on the academic. When you're attending Aerosmith, we're not doing social studies and science. That we are really targeting the parts of the brain that
Right.
you're using across subjects, across
Yes.
daily activities in your life. And with our own school, students who are attending full time do have English and math, but the others, they're coming in and doing the cognitive exercises that work for them,
Right.
that they're in need of. And there is a classroom teacher there with them the whole time. And a nice feature is that we have, if a student's doing a program that is web-based, that the family can log in and see the child's performance and engagement on the screen as well. And so a real range. And that's what we try to do, is be accommodating to families and what their needs are, and what their child's needs are. And adults. We have adults in our
Right.
program as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and we
So,
have a couple of independent programs where, for the symbol relations cognitive function and the motor symbol sequencing cognitive function, those exercises can be done without an assessment, but they can also be done on more of an independent schedule, where we really want you to spend 4 hours a week on them, but you can figure out your own time for doing it. And
okay.
and then
So lots of
you can,
different options.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then you can link in with the teacher every week or every 2 weeks for 20 to 40 minutes in that
Hmm.
type of model. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Well,
a
that's
real range. And we have, like, with our I know this is for homeschooling, but with our
Mhm,
school, we do, go on outings, like our
mhm,
in-person school community goes on outings. We do the typical things like the Terry Fox run and, drives for the food bank and,
mhm.
yeah, lots of fun stuff. A positive
Yeah. Yeah.
community and very neurodiverse population here. It's a fun place.
That's
Yeah.
neat. Yeah, Shelley told me before the show that, she came out of retirement to work at
I
the school, and so that I can just tell by how you've talked about this program and just the lives that are changing, just how passionate you are
yeah.
about what the work that you're doing, and it's very exciting to hear about.
Barbara wrote a book. That's how I initially became aware of her back in 2012. The book, "The Woman Who Changed Her Brain,"
Mm,
and it gives insights into other individuals and their challenges and the work that she did to support them and the cognitive
mm,
exercises that came out of them. And she's also being written about in other individuals' books. Norman Doidge, um, and uh, and Joe Bowler recently
hmm.
has included Barbara's work in her book. So yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's great to see that more
Yeah.
and more people are becoming aware of neuroplasticity and the ability for the brain to change. Because now
Yes.
when I say that,
Yeah.
it feels like, well, why? How could they not? But there was a time where,
There
yeah,
was a
they,
time.
yes, they
Exactly.
did not believe
Yes.
that. So yeah,
Right. Well,
yeah.
provides a lot of hope for a lot of our kids and a lot of us too.
No, that's right. That's right.
So,
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, thank you for all that you've had to share today, Shelley. I am just so blessed by all that you have, the information you've given us, the hope that you've shared, and the resources that are available.
yeah. Well, thanks,
So,
Peggy. No, it's been great to chat with you and share some things with your audience. And we
yeah.
have a great team here. If anyone has any questions, that please do reach out. You'll find
Mm.
some links on the website so you can access us really easily. Please do.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and that website again is aerosmith.ca, and I encourage you to just check it out.
yeah,
Even if it's just reading the information on the website, it's a lot of really good information there. So,
yeah.
but reach out if you feel like that this team could help you out and help your student out. So thank you again,
Great. All
Shelley.
right.
I
Okay. Thank
appreciate
you.
it. I'm
Thanks,
gonna let
Peggy.
you go, but I have a couple other
Okay.
questions that came in from viewers, and so I'm gonna answer those before I head out. So
All right.
appreciate you, Shelley, and
Thanks,
have a
Peggy.
good rest of your day
Okay, take
and
care.
continue the
I'll see
amazing
you.
work.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks. Okay.
Bye. We had another question come in from a viewer, and I just want to encourage you if you're a regular viewer of the show, we do send out an e blast the night before asking for your questions. And more so, we've been getting more questions that are not related to the topic, but just questions you want answered. And so we're changing kind of the format of the show just a little bit right now. It's going to change a lot coming up in a couple weeks. I'm actually adding 4 co-hosts. This is my little plug for that. Um, and we're going to be hitting some hot topics. We're going to be kind of doing roundtable discussions, kind of like the homeschool view version. It's going to be really fun. And it's guests that I've had on the show many times before that have been favorites. So you'll definitely want to hang on and join us as that transition happens. It's going to be super exciting. And that'll go onto the podcast as well. But the one question that came in that really wasn't specific to the topic and I really wanted to address came in from Courtney, and she said, "What is the best Christian curriculum for struggling learners?" And then the second half was, "How do you grade high school if you don't do tests?" Um, First question: best curriculum? There isn't. Sorry. You can basically pick anything. If you are passionate as a parent about a curriculum, go with it. Because anything, even if it's made for a student with special needs, um, you're going to have to modify or accommodate it. You're going to have to change it to follow those specific interests of your child to increase that learning. Just like Shelley and I were talking about, you have to hit those points of where they're motivated and dig into that. So really pray about it. And for me, unit studies worked. For a lot of people, unit studies don't work. Some people love classical education, so they go with a classical approach. Some people prefer more of a Charlotte Mason approach. All of those, if you search around, have great curriculums. A lot of those people have been on my show that made those programs, or they have blogs on our website at spedhomeschool.com. So check those out. See what really resonates with you. Which person just has this educational philosophy that agrees with you? I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people and I think, that's great for you, but could not have made that happen in my house. Classical education is one of them. I just tend to be the type of person that I look at a recipe, see the ingredients, and go, oh, good. And I close the book. So buying a curriculum that tells me what to do step by step just didn't work. It didn't mean that it wouldn't work for my child. It probably would have if I had been a parent who wanted to do that and that really fit with me. So make sure that when you pick a curriculum, it resonates with you first, because that is what's going to make you a better teacher. And then if you're looking for a curriculum that's Christian specific, make sure it aligns with your values, and go from there. And God will give you a peace about it. That's probably the biggest advice that I have for you. Second, how do you grade high school if you don't do tests? So I want you to familiarize yourself with what a rubric is. A rubric is something you set out previous to starting teaching a time period. So whether it's a class, whether it's a subject matter, and maybe you're going to teach that subject matter over multiple years. Develop a rubric, though. There's lots of free rubric generators out there. I think I even have connections. If you search rubric on the SPED Homeschool website, you'll probably find my favorite on there. But just know that you set then ahead of time what you're going to give points for. And it doesn't have to be a test. It can be that they turned in their work, that they did this project and how much that project was worth, and each part of that project, how much points were given for each of that. So you basically break it down. And what's really good about this, if you have a struggling student, is that ahead of time, your child knows what they're going to be graded on. So my kids would take these rubrics and go, oh, if I don't write this long of a paper, then I'm only going to get this many points. But if I write this much, then I'll get this many points. And then of course there's the spelling, and there's, did you go through the process, and or did they show up with a happy attitude every day? You can grade on those things. What is important to you? What is developing not only the learning skills in your child, but the character in your child? So think ahead of time about what you are going to give a grade on. Write it down. And then you've got a simple format, not only for grading, but your student knows what's expected also. So rubrics are amazing. So I would say dive into those as well. I got a comment. Well, I was talking with Shelley at Creative Minds Homeschooling, said I was able to watch today, live today. I am so excited. I haven't seen you in a long time. But I'm glad you were able to make the show today, especially today, because like I said, things are changing, formats changing a little bit. And so just super excited about where the show is going, and just thank all of you for joining me. Next episode, so next week, same time, same place, we are going to be talking about sightful learning, unveiling the impact of vision on student success. And so if you think, oh, my child has 20/20 vision, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about just how even like depth perception, other things that are related to sight, and how it affects learning. So we're going to have an expert on next week to talk a little bit about that, and just some things that maybe you aren't even catching, or none of the professionals have caught, and it might be leading to some struggles. Just like we were talking about with Shelley earlier, there's a lot of underlying things that we tend to slap labels on. And if we slap the label on, then we just put Band-Aids on and trying to fix that for our student instead of going deep underneath what's really going on that maybe has a much more global impact on your student than you realize. So addressing that, and I hope that you got a lot out of today's discussion. It's so important. Mental health issues are just increasing abundantly, and our kids are becoming more victims of things because of their self-esteem being low. And it doesn't matter where your child's in school or at home. It's across the board becoming more and more prevalent. So I'm glad we were able to address that issue today. And I'm glad that you joined us for this episode. So I will see you all next time here on Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Until then, take care and God bless. Love you, everybody. See you next time. Bye.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool. Go to spedhomeschool.com to get resources and support for teaching your unique learner at home.